It was supposed to be a new beginning. In 2014, Derek and Maria Broadus were a couple full of hope, ready to start the next chapter of their lives. They had just purchased what many would consider the perfect home. A stately 6-bedroom house at 657 Boulevard in the quiet, upscale suburb of Westfield, New Jersey. The house was grand, elegant, and located on one of the most desirable streets in town. A neighborhood filled with history, charm, and seemingly safety. It was exactly the kind of place where you'd want to raise a family. Derek, an executive at an insurance company, had grown up in a working-class background and now found himself able to give his wife and their 3 young children a better life. Maria, who had been raised in Westfield, saw this home as a return to her roots. The couple began making renovations immediately, painting walls, replacing fixtures, and getting everything ready for their family's move-in. But then, something arrived that changed everything. Just 3 days after closing on the house, while checking the mailbox, Derek found an envelope. It was white, with no return address. Inside was a letter, typed, formal, and oddly personal. It began with a warm welcome. "Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood." But the tone quickly shifted. 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. The letter mentioned the Broadus family by name. It referenced their children, though they had never publicly shared their names. It even mentioned workers in the house, and detailed features visible only to someone watching very, very closely. Then came the chilling line. "Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested?" Derek was frozen. This wasn't a prank. It wasn't some harmless neighborhood joke. Someone was watching. Someone who claimed to have a history with the house. Someone who knew far too much. He ran inside, the letter trembling in his hands, and called the police. Officers arrived quickly and took the situation seriously. The letter was bagged as evidence, and the family was advised to delay moving in until an investigation could begin. But this was only the beginning. Over the next few weeks, more letters arrived, each one more disturbing than the last. The watcher, as the writer signed off, seemed to be growing bolder, angrier, and more obsessed. What was once a dream home had become a house wrapped in fear. And no one, not the police, not the neighbors, not even the Broaduses, could figure out who the watcher was, or what they truly wanted. This raises the question: would you still move in, knowing someone was already watching you from the shadows? Or would you walk away from your dream to protect your family from an invisible threat? Let us know in the comments. This is just the beginning. As summer settled over Westfield, the renovations at 657 Boulevard continued, but so did the letters. Just days after the first disturbing message, another envelope arrived. Again, no return address. Again, the typewritten words dripped with obsession. "The workers have been busy. I have been watching." This time, the letter was even more detailed. The watcher mentioned the children again, describing them not just as young blood, but commenting on the way they played and laughed. He asked about one child in particular, calling them by a nickname only close family would know. That detail sent a wave of fear through the Broaduses. Someone had been watching, from close range. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all the secrets it holds yet? The Broaduses were no longer sleeping at the house. They had never officially moved in, but the renovations continued during the day, and Derek often visited the property to oversee the work. Every visit brought anxiety. Every creak of a floorboard, every glance from a passerby felt like a threat. The watcher knew things he shouldn't. The color of the children's bikes, the layout of the home's interior, the exact locations of newly installed cameras. It wasn't just unsettling, it was invasive. It was personal. The letters weren't just targeting the house, they were targeting the family. The police, despite their efforts, found no fingerprints, no digital trail, no credible suspects. They suggested that perhaps a neighbor was involved. After all, who else could know so much about what was happening behind closed doors? The Broaddeuces began conducting their own investigation. Derek even hired private investigators and former FBI agents. They looked into everyone nearby. One name that stood out was that of a neighbor who had lived on the block for decades. Someone who had once written a letter of concern about changes in the neighborhood. But there was no concrete evidence, just suspicions. One thing was clear. Someone nearby didn't want the Broaddus family there, and the watcher was getting angrier. In one letter, he wrote, "You have changed it and made it so fancy. It cries for the past and what used to be in the time when I roamed its halls. The house is crying from all the pain it is going through. You have changed it and made it so fancy. You are stealing its history. It cries for the past and what used to be in the time when I roamed its halls." This wasn't about money. It wasn't about property lines or noise complaints. It was something deeper. It was obsession. If you're finding this story as chilling as we are, don't forget to subscribe for more real-life mysteries, unsolved cases, and eerie encounters. Your support helps keep these investigations alive, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Because the story of 657 Boulevard wasn't fading, it was escalating. New theories began to emerge online. Was this an elaborate hoax by the family? A former tenant jealous of the renovations? A disturbed neighbor with too much time on their hands? Or was it something more unexplainable? Whatever the truth was, one fact remained undeniable. The letters kept coming. By late 2014, the Broaddus family was no longer dreaming of 657 Boulevard. They were trapped by it. The beautiful 6-bedroom home that once symbolized a new chapter had become a place of paranoia and dread. They still hadn't moved in. The walls remained untouched by family portraits. Laughter never filled the rooms. The halls remained silent, except for the whispers of fear that now echoed between them. They made a decision. The house had to go. In February 2015, Derek and Maria Broaddus put 657 Boulevard back on the market, without ever having lived there. But news had already begun to leak. Rumors were circulating in Westfield, and Westfield, as it turned out, wasn't the kind of town where secrets stayed buried for long. Potential buyers came to see the house, and then left quickly. Some had heard the whispers. Others simply sensed that something was off. The Broaddeuces were forced to disclose the existence of the letters, and just like that, the home became radioactive. Who would buy a house being stalked by a mysterious letter writer who claimed to be watching from the shadows? Derek and Maria considered drastic options. They approached the town's planning board with a proposal to tear down the house and split the lot into 2 homes. But the board rejected the idea. Westfield had rules, tradition, aesthetics, and the unspoken value of preserving the neighborhood's character. Meanwhile, new letters kept arriving. Maybe a car accident, maybe a fire, maybe something as simple as a mild illness that never seems to go away but makes you feel sick day after day after day after day. The watcher's tone had turned darker, more violent. The once cryptic curiosity now read like a threat. With each new letter, the mystery deepened. Neighbors began pointing fingers at one another. Some suspected the family was behind the entire thing, a hoax to get out of a bad real estate deal. Others believed the watcher was someone local, possibly even someone with a long-standing grudge. One neighbor, Michael Langford, was questioned repeatedly. His house was directly behind 657 Boulevard, and he fit the profile: odd, quiet, eccentric. But there was never enough evidence. No charges were filed. The Broaddeuces were stuck, financially and emotionally. They rented the house briefly to tenants, but even they received a letter. "You have children. I've seen them. So far, I think there are 3 that I have counted." That was all it took. The tenants moved out shortly after. The watcher was still out there. And now the question wasn't just, who is the watcher? It was why. Why this house? Why this family? And what would happen if they refused to leave? By this point, the story had gone viral. National news outlets picked it up. The internet flooded with theories. Reddit threads exploded. Paranormal investigators chimed in. Was the watcher real? Or was he an invention of the Broaddeuces themselves? The mystery became a phenomenon. A dark fairy tale for the digital age. A perfect suburban home. An invisible threat. A family caught in a nightmare with no escape. And the scariest part? The watcher never stopped writing. By 2016, the Broaddus family had become reluctant celebrities, unwilling protagonists in a true story more bizarre than fiction. The media had painted them as both victims and suspects. Online forums debated their every move. Yet, no matter how many theories were thrown into the digital void, one truth remained. No one knew who the watcher was. And the watcher wasn't finished. After renting out the house, receiving more letters, and living with the weight of unanswered questions, Derek and Maria made a quiet, final decision. In 2019, 5 years after purchasing 657 Boulevard, they managed to sell the home at a significant loss. The dream had died. The nightmare would be someone else's to face. But even then, no resolution came. The Westfield police had exhausted their resources. The private investigators hired by the Broaddeuces had turned up nothing. Advanced DNA testing from the envelopes revealed that the writer was likely a woman, but that was as far as the forensics would go. One suspect after another was cleared. The case went cold, officially, but not in the minds of those who still lived nearby. Because the watcher could be anyone. A neighbor, a passerby, a stranger, or someone who had never left the street at all. Was it someone with a deep connection to the home? Someone reliving their childhood through obsession and ink? Or was it something more unexplainable? Some theorists believe the house itself was cursed, tied to a darker energy that fed on anxiety and fear. Others pointed to historical records and odd past owners of 657 Boulevard. But no matter how deep people dug, the story ended in the same place it began, with a house and a letter and a name: the Watcher. There was no final confrontation, no arrest, no confession. The new owners of the house have reportedly never received a letter. Whether the Watcher disappeared, lost interest, or moved on remains a mystery. But one unsettling truth remains. If this was about the house, why stop watching now? Unless, of course, it was never about the house at all. And here lies the real terror: the silence. After all the letters, all the fear, all the headlines, the quiet that followed was louder than anything that came before it. 657. Boulevard still stands. Its windows reflect the same sunlight. Its halls echo with the footsteps of new occupants. But for those who followed the story, those who've seen the letters, and those who felt that strange sensation of being watched, the mystery remains unsolved. And so we ask you, who do you think the watcher was? Was it a disturbed neighbor too clever to be caught? A hoax that spiraled out of control? Or something much, much stranger than any of us are willing to believe? Drop your theory in the comments. Let's see how many of you can solve what investigators never could. Because the watcher may be silent, but the mystery is very much alive.